Hey there, I'm Sarita, and you're about to experience the modern approach to well-being, where you get to establish the best and most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. I'm on a mission to help you declutter energy and reclaim your power so you can be a magnet to what you desire. If you're looking for the optimal blend of mindset and healing, you're in the right place. My goal in this podcast is to share tools, resources, and practices that will help you along your healing journey. I'm so excited to be here with you today, so welcome to Back to Here with Sarita. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Back to Here with Sarita. I'm super happy that you're here with me today. And if you can see, actually, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform like Spotify or Apple, you probably are not going to be able to see. But if you're watching this on YouTube, and I invite you to head over to YouTube, you can see that the setup for today's podcast is just a little bit different. I'm actually doing an in-person interview today with a guest, and let me introduce you to her. I'm very excited that she's here with me today to share as we go through our abundance chat series. As you would know, this year is all about abundance chats, and 2024, if you add that up, is number 8. So that is why we have these abundance chats this year. So my amazing, wonderful guest is Camille Grace Kelly. She is a licensed psychotherapist, priestess, and firstborn gen in the US. Camille earned her master's in counseling psychology from National University. One of Camille's biggest rites of passage was becoming a mother, and she survived postpartum depression after having her first child 3 days before the pandemic. And then after having her second daughter, Camille knew that she needed to dig deep into her femininity and heal, thus leading to the path of becoming a priestess in sacred feminine. So Camille has completed her first year of priestess training through the 13 Moon Mystery School. She's also certified feminine rites of passage facilitator. And Camille loves creating rituals and ceremonies to set intentions and honor milestones in women's lives. And for over a decade, Camille has been a part of hundreds of women's journeys of transformation. Camille, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
I'm really happy.
Oh, good. And I'm so happy that you were agreeable to doing a podcast episode in person.
Yes, I'm a visual person. So as much as I love hearing, to be able to have a visual part too is great.
Yes. So this is fun because, like I said, this is the first podcast episode that I'm doing actually in person. Most of the time, if you are an avid listener and have seen some of the podcast episodes, they're usually done virtually, and I'll have my, my person that I'm talking to on the other side, wherever they are located. So this is just very unique and special. So we get to be within each other's energy here in person. So yes, Camille, you have an amazing, amazing background. And I'm sure hearing that, you're just like, wow, I did all that.
In a short amount. I've been here for a while, but it's gone by so fast.
Yeah, I bet. So let's kind of back up a little bit, and we'll intertwine all the abundance in there because that's I'm sure, part of your story and part of the experience that you've had, especially when it comes to being a mother, doing therapy and all the other things that you're a part of. Camille wears a lot of hats, just to let you know. She does, and she'll go into that. She's such a superwoman. I'm very impressed. And she has 2 little girls. So let's back up a little bit and kind of this is a very large question, but kind of how did you come to where you are right now?
Where I am at right now. So let's see, starting with childhood, I'm the oldest daughter, first of all, and both of my parents are from the Philippines. And then my parents, they ended up divorcing when I was super young. And so I was basically raised by my mother, me and my siblings. And so it was the 4 of us most of my life. And, we struggled here and there, moved around a lot through Southern California. And then I think because I was the oldest child and I was like the go-to person for my mother, I feel like after I finished my bachelor's, I was like, well, what's next? And then somehow I met this woman who ended up being my mentor, and she had just finished grad school, and she's like, yeah, I'm becoming a therapist. And I was like, a therapist? And I had been through therapy most of my life. It definitely helped me. I started as a teenager, diagnosed with depression as a teen, and it helped me all through my teen years. It helped me all through college, and then it just kind of hit me like, how can I knew that there was a greater purpose for me. I knew that I was brought here to help people heal and grow and learn, and I just didn't know that for a while. And so it took me, I mean, I was still pretty young, mid 20s, when I went back to school, and got my master's, and it just kind of it just made sense. And then after becoming a therapist, there were other parts that didn't necessarily feel right all the time, because psychology is basically, like white old men created it. and
Correct.
so
Yes.
and so it didn't always feel right. And
Mm,
then I was like, okay, like I need to be able to do things like my way, and not necessarily, and like what feels natural. And so, slowly but surely I've been like decolonizing the way that I do therapy. And then after I had both of my girls, I was like, how am I going to raise two women in this crazy ass world? And
yeah.
what do I need to do to heal parts of me? Because I know as a therapist that if I don't heal certain parts of me, it's going to show up in my parenting. It's going to show up in my marriage with my husband. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And like, I don't want to just do therapy either. And so I came across, and then I kept hearing the word priestess come up on social media. It just got like, it's pretty popular. And so I was fortunate enough to have a couple mentors that I met through Instagram that were able to kind of mentor me and show me their path of what they did to become a priestess. And it really helped me not only heal parts of myself, but I've been able to help so many women. I have my own temple here in San Diego that I've been running now for almost 2 years. And I've had this amazing group of women that we just come together in circle and we help each other. And we've been able to heal together and learn and grow. And that's the part too that like I feel like I was able to heal that like sister woman wound
Mm,
that a lot
hmm.
of us have, because our culture, right, or here in the US, they constantly put us against each other. And when I
Yes.
started to realize that there's enough space in this world for all of us to be who
Yes.
we are, even if we do similar things, like there's enough. It's an abundance, right?
Yes.
There's so much out there. And so I started building my community here in San Diego. I you know, I finally started to meet like minded women. And then, yeah, being able to raise my daughters, being strong in like her story, right? Right.
Hmm.
And not necessarily like feed into all the things that was given to me like as a child. Like, I was raised Catholic, and I was like, this just doesn't feel right either. There was just so many parts of my life that did not feel right. And I'm like, why am I going to bring my daughters into this? Because everyone's like, oh, are you going to baptize them? And I'm like, oh no. Like, yes, culturally, like that's what most of us did, especially like
Right.
the Filipino culture, a lot of Latin American cultures, like,
Hmm.
and I was just, I have to do things differently. I just have to do things differently, because that's what feels right.
I love that. Renegade. I love that. And, just going back, it's interesting how that happens where you have we have this calling, right? Like we
Yes.
don't understand it. And it's not until we really dive deeper into our journey and start moving forward and doing the healing and things when the light bulb kind of turns on and be like, okay, these are parts of me that I realized that were missing, that I wasn't experiencing or wasn't exposed to as a child or as growing up and stuff. And so it just makes sense so often when we have this like calling, this little whisper in our ear
Mm-hmm.
that's like calling us to do the work. And then also, for some people to go on and like full on share, like
Yeah.
share the work. I did want to ask you, because there are some people that are listening to this podcast that are not familiar with the word decolonization. And I think that's very imperative to know, especially And I've had guests of all different backgrounds, and I primarily have talked on on this podcast about being adopted, and also being a transracial adoptee, so being raised by a white parent, and growing up in the Midwest with a very different experience, and then coming here to Southern California. So this whole experience of decolonization, I want to know a little bit more about that, and then also like how you were tying in with like your daughters and like raising women, and then also like your experience as like a therapist when it comes to decolonization and like all that, because it has been such a history of looking a certain way when it comes to mental health spaces.
Right. So for decolonizing, I mean, it's such a process. It's just the way that I look at systems, like especially when I'm looking at my clients, or we call I'm starting to shift and call them participants, right? Because it's like a
I
collaborative,
like that.
it's a
Yeah.
collaborative effort. It's not me telling people and just giving them advice. It's like, this role, especially like even in the Filipino culture, like ancient culture, like women, it was very matriarchal. It was women were the shamans, right? And so they were the ones that
Yes.
that the community would go to, like, oh, what do I do for this or this and that, and I know that I've been read by so many psychics before, and they're like, you have that shaman blood
I
in you,
love it.
and when someone finally told me that, I
Love
was like,
it.
this really is like my calling. And so therapists back in the day were like shamans,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And so, but thinking about like my clients and like the system that they're in, like it's bigger picture, because like this US culture is so like macro, right? It's so individualized. It's like everyone's out for their own. And I feel like part of the decolonizing is like bringing it back to the village, right? Like that's how things were back then,
Yes.
and worked for so long before the colonization happened. And so
Hmm.
really I have to look at things like all different parts of my life. And my husband and I, like, it's like I said, it's an ongoing process. Like we think about all the things that we're saying and doing. Sometimes it seems a little tiresome, but then it just becomes second nature about like where we're investing our money in, like how are we viewing things, um, and is it coming from that, like, that small lens, and is it more from like the colonizing things, like, like I'm trying to think, for example, like even for myself personally, like, I've always been pretty much in every space one of the few, and I'm a dark skinned Filipino woman,
Hmm.
but then just being a brown skinned woman in a lot of these spaces, it's been hard. And it's like, with the things that are going on in this world, and like being a lot of women just being really passive about things, I just couldn't
Yes.
do that anymore. I just couldn't do that anymore. And so I've had to like leave organizations. I've had to step down in roles. I've had to do things that just didn't feel good, because it was just it just felt like it was just going with like that mainstream role without even thinking like critically about things.
Right.
And so that's a really what it is to me, is like looking at different parts of my life. Like, what is the impact? Like, why are we even thinking this? Like, why do I think that I need to be a size 2? Why do I need to worry about like the color mix? Like all these different things, because society has told us like, oh, this is what beauty is, or this is like how you should be, or especially as a therapist, like you need to be professional. And
Hmm.
it's professionals to me is connected to white,
Correct. Yeah. Yep. That's my
because I
experience too.
am going,
Yeah.
and even from the way that I talk, I've been told that I'm ghetto, or that I'm a
Hmm.
certain way. And no, like this is just how I talk.
Hmm.
And when I talk to my clients like this, like they know that I'm real.
Right.
And I've had clients for years that have been with me, and I ask them, like, what is it that you get? And they're like, well, I know that you're authentic and you're genuine,
Right.
right? And then most of the time, the majority of people that I see are women of color, and they want someone, especially Filipino women that come to me, they want someone that understands the culture. They want
Right.
someone that understands the pressure of being, a brown woman in this, like, I get a lot of women that are like, CEOs or like leadership roles, and they're just like, how do I navigate, being a woman of color in leadership, and then also, decolonizing, and then how I work with a lot of women of how to make leadership more feminine.
I love that. I love that.
Because a lot of my roles is a leadership position. I'm also a director at a nonprofit, and I
Right.
oversee like a staff of 30. And
Right.
so when staff comes in, like I don't, to me, that's decolonizing the way that I work, is to
Yes.
leave from a more feminine
I love that.
role. And, you know, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that response. That is a beautiful, well put response in what decolonization is, because you could have given the textbook textbook
Yeah.
terminology,
Yeah.
right? But you're going by your own personal experience, which is basically uprooting everything that we've ever been taught to be true, in other words, or have become our own truths, when in reality, like as we're discussing this, is that they weren't our truths because they didn't feel aligned as a child, or as growing up. We didn't understand that word, as you know, as a young person, and then even growing up, like we didn't understand what alignment really was, but we understood the energy of that, and realizing, and then questioning later on, being like, why is this the way that it is? Why is it that you're telling me that I need to act like a lady? That was something my mom used to tell me all the time, like, act like a lady. Ladies don't do that. You know, ladies don't act like that, or you need to make good grades because you have to work harder because of the color of your skin. Why is that? You know, so
Yeah.
certain things that we've been taught. And I really love your response in that respect, because it allows you to see that the mainstream like look is we're basically upending, you know, uprooting and upending like everything, and reconfirming and reclaiming. And I love what you said about how in ancient cultures, and this is like all around you, like all around the world, is that
Mm-hmm.
women were very matriarchal, and a lot of these ancient cultures had wise people. There was like an emperor or somebody in charge, right? Somebody, a higher person in charge, who wasn't necessarily like a priest or a priestess, but they had somebody, an astrologer, had a wise person. They had those people that they would look to for direction all the time in these ancient cultures. Yet now, I feel like we're finally kind of starting to get back to that, but like it was so frowned upon for so long. Like, oh, it's just a bunch of hogwash. People are just kind of delusional, like, you know, soothsayers, like things like that. People are astrologers. Oh, like that doesn't matter. When in reality, that's how ancient cultures actually navigated life, like every single
Yeah.
day. And I find that how you were saying how you've had psychics read you before, and saying that
Mm-hmm.
that's like part of your identity. That's something that you've carried with you through time. And I think that's so beautiful that we are finally starting to get back to that again.
Totally. I like what you said because it's interesting. Since I turned 40, like, you know, everyone's like, oh, what is this era going to be for you? And everyone thought it was, a lot of people thought it was weird. I was like, this is my wise woman era.
I love it. Yeah,
Like like
me
40
too.
years here, like I'm not going to take that in vain. I'm going to
Hmm.
take all these life lessons and things I've learned, and I'm going to like transmute it, put it out there in all ways that I can, because yeah, I'm not taking this life for granted, and there's so many lessons that have been learned these last 40 years. And so like I know I was like channeling like, you know, owl energy, and I think of like, you know,
Ooh,
the wise woman.
yes.
And so when you said that like definitely I was like, yes, yes.
Yes, wise woman energy. I love that. So, going to some of the people that you've worked with, both in the more, I would say, professional settings, you know, as in like office settings, and then, you know, with your temple, with women, especially, and you were saying like you work with women of color because that's how it ends up being with a
Mhm.
lot of us, is that we attract what we are because people relate to who we are. That's part of the
Mhm.
reason I'm sure me and you connected in
Yeah.
the first place, is we have this like commonality, this thread of knowing, like, you know, the similar experience. So for some of the women that have come to you, what's like a big theme that you keep seeing over and over again with women, and like, you know, you were saying women in leadership and trying to learn how to like navigate like these certain roles and things like that, or maybe a woman that's come to your temple who's also a mother, and you know, having what are some of the common threads or themes that you've seen throughout?
As soon as you said that, I
You
said
got it.
the first thing is trusting their intuition,
Mm, that's so huge. Yeah.
because society has told us over and over again, like, no, like you don't know what you're talking about, like that feeling inside, or that it must be that time of the month,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I tell women, I was like, yes, you might be PMSing, you might be on your period, but that is a gift, and that is a time when you are not a bitch, you are discerning. You know what you want and what you don't want, and you don't take shit. So don't
Yeah.
let anyone else tell you anything else about that. And so, the majority of the women, like no matter what phase they are in their life, or if they're in a leadership role, even if they're a stay-at-home mom, it's really like you know what's best for you and yours ultimately, and like how to trust that, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are just like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, or I know I shouldn't have stayed in that relationship, but I still did it,
Yeah.
And so it's just like listening to that, listening to your body. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like your womb is like an indicator of your health too. And so that's a lot of things too, is getting women back in touch with that part
Yes.
of them,
Mm-hmm.
and loving themselves and their bodies just for who we are. Because
Mm-hmm.
we're all unique, and we're all here for a reason.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Yeah, the intuition. I mean, just for people that are watching and listening, how many times have you stayed in a situation or not made a decision because you've second guessed your intuitive sense? Even if it's something as simple as like, oh, don't go into that store right now, and you end up going in. It's something that, we have been conditioned to think that that is um it's not of us, that it's like it's not valuable. That's the word I was looking for. It's not a valuable asset in a modern day society, that because we've been learning from day one, we're very structured and going to school and like raising our hand and having permission to talk and like,
Mm-hmm.
all these like things. And we go into like corporate, lifestyle or whatever type of work lifestyle. Like there's just, it's all, logic, 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 even like with money and finances and so much nowadays. I'm glad we are kind of getting more creative when it comes to like our money and
Oh,
finances, how we
totally.
look at things and in our lives. But we've just been conditioned because it hasn't been of value to us in these modern day, because we have answers that we can go to on Google and like
Right.
find things. So that's beautiful. So those are the two things that you're saying that are the most common.
Yes. Like usually the first session I meet with them, I'm like, okay, I already know where to start. I know where to
Yeah,
start. And it's
right.
just so common. Like I said, we've just been conditioned, kind of what you're saying, to just like follow this path, right? You're going to be
Hmm.
this, and this is all you are. But we're not. Like,
Yeah.
and we talked about this, so there's so many parts of us. And
Hmm.
in order to be a whole person, in order to feel fulfilled, that's the other part of the things that I work on with women, is like what, finding their purpose and feeling fulfilled. Like some people can do a 9 to 5, and that provides money they can live the type of life they want, and that's fine. I'm not knocking that either. But then there's other people that I can relate to, where I can't just do a 9 to 5 without it filling me. Like it has
Hmm.
to fulfill me. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of women are just like, oh, I'm like dying in my 9 to 5. I'm dreading it. Like you can't live your life that way.
Right.
So what does that mean? To me, that's an initiation, that's an activation from inside telling you,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I agree. Fulfillment is an interesting word now I think about it. And I want to venture and even say this, that as women, there, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this because this is something that just came up for me recently in discussing this with somebody, because I didn't really think about it this way, is that part of the feminine energy is to it's constantly changing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're in the ebbing and flowing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of thinking out loud here as I'm like trying to articulate what it is I'm trying to say, but the fulfillment, and so we've been conditioned, right, as women, is like we should be happy with the lot in life that's given to us. Like, if it's marrying a man, if it's like getting a job, it's like all the things. But because we're innately women and we're in like this feminine energy, there's this like sense in us that is constantly like looking and searching, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like. And like, I don't know if that's part of, the feminine energy of
Mm-hmm.
wanting to search for an answer or search for something. And like I've felt that, and I've had people, men usually, tell me like that's wrong, as in like, can't you
Mm-hmm.
just be happy with like, where you are in life or what's happening? And so it's like this longing or desire, and we've been told, that like it's good to go after, things that we want, but it's like if we don't know what it is that we want because we haven't done the internal, full on work yet, like it's hard to decipher what that is. And so this like longing and desire is like something that is a constant. So like there's I feel like it's difficult for some of us to feel fulfilled because there's that in us.
Yeah, so the
Did I say that
feminine,
right?
yes, no, you're right. The feminine energy is that, right? Like we
Right.
are free flowing, and that's, and also I like what you're saying, like in the feminine too, because I'm what I've learned in my training to be a sacred feminine rites of passage facilitator is that us as feminine, like our cycle, the way we cycle in life is a like life, death, rebirth,
Mm,
life, death,
yes,
rebirth,
right.
and I,
And
I
talk
mean,
about that cycle because some people don't know about the cycle. Like, this is
yes.
very interesting how men have a certain cycle and women have a certain cycle. And you might have seen this on TikTok or YouTube, but I'll let you explain.
Well, I mean, we just cycle, like we cycle just like the moon, right?
Right.
We cycle, and our womb is very similar to the moon. And then I think our life too, because the feminine, if you're truly in your feminine, you are going to be that ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right; it's always been like, no, you're one thing, and you're just that.
Constant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that just doesn't make sense. Like why to fill a fulfilled life, like you should be going for whatever you really want,
Mm-hmm.
and like people stay at places, oh, because I have a pension or I have health insurance, and those things are important, yes, but like the, if it's not fulfilling you, then I that's not enough reason to stay anywhere or
Yes.
do anything.
Yeah.
And so that life, death, and rebirth, like there's periods where you're living life like you're doing it, and things like feel good, and then at one point things might not feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Shit blows up, things have to
Yeah.
die. Right now I feel like as a collective, everyone's shedding, everyone's releasing.
Mm-hmm.
2024 has been shedding and releasing, and there's nothing wrong with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we have carried so much these last couple of years
Yeah.
between COVID, what's going on in the world, politics,
Yes.
everything it falls on
It's
us.
a lot
Yes,
energetically. We
it's a
take it
lot.
all on. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, even astrology's been nuts. Like the
Mm-hmm.
planets have been nuts. Like
Oh, yeah.
everything has been
Retrograde again.
yes. It's been
Yeah.
pretty intense, and so
Yeah.
it's like we and women too. Like we follow the same cycles as the Earth, right?
Yes.
Like there's times when it's winter, that's typically the feeling of like death and like hibernation, and and that's the time when I'm just like in it, right? It's in it. I'm cold. I'm under blankets. I'm just like thinking, and then it's like spring comes, and it's like things start to bloom. You start to, the energy just starts to feel different, and then summer, you're doing it, and you're starting to harvest, and then fall comes, and it's like this is how we cycle as a feminine, and
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with it. And so I feel like, I there's so many times I feel like I've been lucky, like even as my career as a therapist, the populations that I have worked with has changed because of where I'm at in my life. When I first became a mother, I was like, oh, all about postpartum. I was like
Mm-hmm.
only seeing mothers or like families, helping with parenting. And then after I had my last daughter and I started going down the priestess path, I was like, no, like I need to go back to helping all women.
Yes.
Right. But there were times where I was only working with couples, or I was only working with like trauma, like it was just whatever. Like I was just, that's where I was in my life. And so, but then I'm able to move through that and like have that, and then even like I was getting burnt out with therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of
Yeah.
last year I was just doing like my priestess training. I had started my temple, was doing retreats, and that was like the only thing that I felt like I had the capacity to do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a privilege. Like I get that. It's definitely a
Yeah.
privilege that I was able to do that, but that's what felt good in that moment. And then now I was like, okay, like I miss mentoring. I miss like helping new therapists grow. And so I took on this role as a director to like train new therapists.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can do that, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, but I get what you're saying. There's always like at some point, me too, I'm just like, well, Camille, like why would you do this, or why would you, like I question myself often
Mm-hmm.
too, like why
Right.
can't you just do this, or like just make your private practice work so you could do that. And it's like, no, my calling right now is here, and in a couple of years it probably won't be that anymore,
Right.
and I'm
Right.
okay with that.
Right. Yeah. And it goes back to trusting the intuition. We've been told over and over again, not to trust like what our body is telling us or what feels good. And that's the thing about intuition, to be honest with you, has been my experience, is it doesn't make fucking sense. Like it never makes sense. It's like it talks to you and it tells you to do something. And intuition, it speaks differently to different people, but my personal experience has been strengthening my intuitive sense. And through that, I've come to understand that my intuitive voice is like very calm, and it's commanding in the way where it's just like, okay, do this. And it's not like, it's not like a freaking out type of, voice or anything. It's just a very calm, like subtle under, like it's very, sometimes it's really, and it's the first thought usually that comes in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I have like completely dismissed it, and then I'm like, darn it. Even as simple as like when I'm driving, it'll be like, go left, I'll be like, nope, going right. And then I'm like, oh shoot, there's like a big old traffic jam, right?
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. So going back to what you were saying, and I love how you were explaining the whole kind of season, or I should say, the cycles that women are in. Right? We have, us women have a 28-day cycle, or anybody that is bleeding, we have a 28-day cycle. Men have like a 24-hour cycle, and so even within that 28 days, like that cycle, there's a lot that's happening in those 28 days, right? Like we've got different stages, luteal phase, we got all these different things. And so, what I'm hearing from you is that it's important for us to honor the season that we're in at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because it's meant for us. And
Yes.
so, I'm reflecting back on a season that I just had that was very challenging for me, because I've been, could be part of my personality, could be part of my astrological, but I'm kind of a go-getter. I like doing, like I'm a doer. And it's been challenging for me, even though I like resting. I've learned to rest and recover. But I went through a very intense winter stage not that long ago. And it was very challenging for me to really embrace all that. I actually did a podcast episode on it, saying like I became this person that was like really bitter and frustrated, and I got to sit with those emotions of like skepticism and like all these irritations and things, and I was like, this doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel good at all to be in this stage. But it was a winter stage because I wasn't creating, I wasn't really being active on social media, I wasn't going out a lot and connecting with friends. Like there was just a lot of different things that were not happening. So it was interesting, like allowing myself to just really try to embrace that. And that was the first time that it actually really integrated in my life, where I was like, okay, like this is what it means to honor the season that I'm in.
Yeah. You can't bypass
Right.
anything. Like to get through anything, you have to go through it. There's like no way around it. And so I'm glad that you came to that awareness where it's just like I just have to sit with it and I have to feel it, because you're not a robot, you're a
Right.
human, right?
Right.
And as humans, we just and that's a lot of what I teach in therapy too. They're just like, I don't want to feel this way. And it's like, well, no, like, why is this feeling coming up?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like that winter season, it's like, it's just inward. And every winter, like, yeah, I feel that. I feel that. And I learned to embrace it. And I'm just like, yeah, it's cold. I don't want to go outside. I just want to be under
Right.
blankets. I have a lot on my mind with the new year coming up. And that's my cycle. And that's my
Yeah.
cycle. And
Yeah.
so
Very
it's good.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to transition into a little bit of, because I'm like, I want to pick your brain in this because I
Yeah.
love this, is this the ebbing and flowing, but like the connection between feminine energy and abundance. Like I really want to know a lot more about that. That's part of the reason why I'm having you as a guest, because I like want to learn more about this, because it's just an important part of um the energy. Like that's what I think is so important, is, and now as a woman who is very, just a little side note for me, like as somebody who is very like, I was raised by a single mom, so I had to be like very strong, very independent, very in my masculine, had went to school, was like learning, all the things, got into a corporate job, like had to like put on the mask, the whole thing. And even, and I felt like I wasn't allowed to fully be woman. I wasn't allowed to fully be in my feminine. Like even when I went to interviews at like wearing black and like not being able to wear something like this is kind of stuff that I like wearing now because I like to be more in my feminine. So I felt like I was almost in this sense of like scarcity because I wasn't allowed to feel abundantly feminine. And so, as I've been doing my healing and slowing down and just being, allowing myself to be, I've discovered that there's more abundance for me available. So, I want to know, like, from your personal experience and also, in your teachings, like, how are those two interconnected? Because it makes a lot of sense to me from my personal experience.
It does, because when well, I guess I have to start with like what I think abundance
Mhm.
is, right?
Yes.
Because I feel like it's very different for everyone, and
Yeah.
the way I think about abundance, it does come from like a feminine perspective.
Yeah.
And so for me, it is, let's see, to me, abundance is like agency,
Mm, I like that.
having the, literally a lot of what you're saying, having that ability to like move freely
Yeah.
as me.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's abundance, because I've have lived my life so concerned about other things and people all the time.
Yeah.
And so now that I have like built this life where I can fully be me in all the different ways, like I'm so fulfilled, and I'm so, and so it is a balance though, right? So it is like my feminine, it is out there, it is unapologetic. And then also that masculine side, I know when to bring it in, right? So it is
Yeah.
like that business mindset, like, because I run a bunch of businesses, and so I
Right.
have to have certain things like that. But as far as like, yeah, femininity, I feel like, yeah, they do go hand in hand, because I feel like that is the energy of the feminine. I'm trying to think of like a better way to explain it, but to me it just makes sense, because
Yeah.
that's like, we're free flowing, we are in touch with our intuition, we are unapologetic, we are like living, fulfilling, in touch with our body, nature. Like, to me, that's all the feminine stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what abundance truly, really is
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. The word agency was like, that really hit the nail on the head for me because agency is empowerment. Like
Mhm.
it
Yes.
is allowing you to be like who you desire to be. So for you, I know, and I want you to share this with the audience as well, because you, like I said at the beginning, you wear a lot of hats. So she's part of like different organizations. You're like you're the main person for this therapy office, the one we're recording in right now. You're the you run everything. You have different nonprofits that you're on board with and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so what I think is amazing is that like wearing the different hats, but being like that all is interconnected,
It
because of
is.
you.
It is, and I go into all those spaces now like me. Like, even like the job that I'm at now, I went in and I said, I have two little kids. They are sick all the time. I need to be able to just like pick up my stuff and go pick them up. I need to be able to like not be restricted in the office all the time. I'm really barely in this office. I need to be able to, I need to have freedom, and I need to be
Hmm.
remote if I need to. If I do need an office, I need that available to me too. And I thought they were going to tell me to kick rocks, but because this the founder of this organization is a woman too, it's
Love it.
very different. She was
Hmm.
like, "Oh no, I'm a mother. Like, I get it.
Hmm.
You families first.
Love
If
that.
you need to go, you take care of your kids. Like, it's fine. Just communicate. We're good." And I was like, "Oh," because I was getting recruited all the time. Like, I had just put my resume up, and I was like getting interviews, and I kept interviewing, and I was like, "No, nope, nope, nope," because it didn't feel like I could be in my feminine.
Yeah.
Like, giving me 10 sick days a year, like, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, not with two toddlers in daycare. They're literally sick like half of the year.
Yeah.
And then I end up getting sick too. Like, just
Right.
things like that. Like, that, who made that up? That 10 days a year? Like, that just
That's
things
awful.
things like that like don't make
Yeah.
sense, right?
Right.
And I'm not gonna subscribe to it anymore. And
Right.
so when I came into this mission, I was just like, no, like, this is what I need. And they're okay. And I was like, oh, because sometimes you just have to ask,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I felt like, because I was also very confident, and I have built myself up, like, I know my value and my worth. And
Right.
I feel like when people come into interviews or they come in, they're just like, oh, well, okay. And I'm just like, no, like, and when I, even in my therapy clients, are like, oh, I did this interview. They want to give me this amount. And I was like, no, you better ask for more. And they're just like, really? I could do, yes, you can do that. You
Yeah.
can do that,
Yeah.
And so I think, did I answer your question?
Yes, you
Yes.
did.
Okay. I
You
feel like I
did.
could go on and on and on.
No, no, I love that. And this goes back to what you were saying about how women are realizing that they can reconstruct things. I mean,
Mhm.
this goes back to the decolonization, right? Because it's
Totally.
not just about, color of skin. It has to do with like male and female and patriarchy and things like that, and like
Totally.
things need to be a certain way, and this is how a business is run. And as you and me both have been in the entrepreneurial spaces for a while, we have been subjected to this idea of what like a business should look like, right? And as even like a brick and people that have brick and mortar businesses, and that are starting to change like the way things are run. And now that online spaces are a lot more popular and there's so many more influencers and people online and things like that, it's interesting to see how this is changing, like how women are saying like, that like I had my last guest that I had on the podcast even was saying like, yeah, I like to bring my like feminine essence to my business, and my male counterparts who, because she has a spa, the medical spa, it's like my male counterparts run it this way, and I don't want it run that way. I desire it to be an experience for people to come in instead of like a number. We come in, you go through the
Yes.
flow of things, you're just like la da da out the door. She's like, I want it to embody an experience of somebody coming in, and that's what I like when there are more women in places of, I would say, power, because it allows us to understand that there's, it doesn't need to look so rigid and
Right.
structured.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, totally. Yeah. And so every part of my life, I try to bring in that femininity. I try to, decolonize, and so it's a lot of work, but it's good, and I feel like it's little by little making an impact, and it's like the ripple into the community, right? I'm
Yeah.
training new therapists, and they're going to go on, in their career, and they're going to know, like, how to approach situations. Like if you have a mother that's a single mother, low income, coming in, like it's probably, how do you look at like the big picture and not just like be judgmental or like
Right.
think you already know this person, and like,
Right.
can you really help this person?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So one more final question that I have, apart from the question I always ask at the end, um, is for someone that may be listening to this, especially because I have a lot of women listening to this podcast. There are a lot of women out there that are wearing a lot of different hats. They're a mother, they're a significant, they're a wife or a significant other. They may run a business, or they may, be a corporate employee, and they may be a pet parent. They may, be taking care of their elder parents, right? So they're a child. So they may be a lot of different requirements that, or I should say, spaces that require their energy and attention. For you personally, what has been like so helpful in you filling up your cup, I guess, in essence, for you to show up in all these different spaces that you have, that you're a part of?
yes, so it really is. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It is finding a balance. It's hard. It's hard, but I know that if I'm not fulfilled, then I won't be a good mother. I won't be a good partner. I won't be a good director, supervisor, therapist, friend, like all
Mm-hmm.
these different parts of me. Like when I'm
Right.
unbalanced and I don't take care of myself, like I feel those other things slipping away.
Yeah.
And so even though it's like, it's hard, and I know I come from a more privileged perspective, um, it, but, but it's still tough. It's really tough. I don't have a lot of support here in San Diego. I wasn't, none of my family's here in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to build my own community. So that's the other thing too, is like having a village,
Yes. Yeah.
So, I've lived in San Diego for a while, and for the first time I've actually had like other women of color in the spiritual community, like I was like, oh my gosh, finally, like
I love that.
that
Me
is what I
too.
was like looking for
Mm-hmm.
so long. So I feel like I had everything else, but I was like, this part of me is still missing. And so having that awareness and acknowledging it, because I could just go through life, but I was like, no, like I need my girls. Like we all need our girls, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's so important. Like, you know, and so I think it is finding that balance. And even if it's not a lot, like I don't see my friends a lot, but I know if I need them, they're there.
Right.
And then, yeah, like I'm a mother, but like it can't be, it's not all of me.
Right.
It's not all of
Mm-hmm.
me. And I know it's hard. Some mamas we love so deeply our children, like we grew them, they came from us, like I get that, but it's also it's too much, especially like the way everything's portrayed on social media, like how you're
Yeah.
supposed to be as a mom.
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
know that that's just not me.
Yeah.
I have to, I have to still have weekly date nights with my husband. Like we prioritize our marriage, like probably over everything, because we're the king and queen of
That's
that
beautiful.
household,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like if we're not good, then that trickles down.
Right.
So it's prioritizing things, balancing things. It's taken a while. It took us a little while, but I feel like we're finally there. Finally.
I love
And I
that.
didn't give
Yeah.
up either.
Yeah.
Right? I'm still doing my own healing. I'm still in my own therapy. Me and my husband go to coaching. I still have my own spiritual practice, and every time that I lead a spiritual practice, like it fulfills me too, like being in circle with
Mm-hmm.
women. Um, so I have to have certain things that I know. I wake up at 5:30 to work out at 6 a.m. Like I have to work out. Like there's
Yeah.
gotta take care of my body too. So it's
Right.
so all those different things, and it's like I have an understanding partner that understands that.
It's
I
amazing.
have built up my village, my community, other strong women. I still have my mentors too, or I feel like most of my career and just life, I'm like, okay, who's doing what I want to do, and I reach out to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I make them my mentors.
I
And
love
I feel
that.
like that's how I've been able to get this far too in my career.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. It really starts with you as, as a person. Yeah, I see that, like what you're saying essentially is like your source. You're the
Yes.
source of everything. And if you're not feeding the source, if you're not giving to the source, if you're not replenishing
Mhm.
the source will fall apart.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what I see over and over with women
Mm.
and mothers too. It's like
Yeah.
because we are givers, we're naturally very
Right.
nurturing. And
Right.
so we give and we give and we give. And it's like, no, we can there's reciprocity in the
Right.
universe, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly, which is like the abundance of the universe, right?
yes.
So you did already answer my question in essence, which is the one I usually ask is what is abundance to you, Camille?
So abundance for me is really, like I said, agency earlier, but what in digging deeper into that is really that free will and choice to be able to live the life that I want to live, to navigate life as Camille and not pretending to be anything else. Um, and to me, that's life of abundance and finding calm and peace in this crazy world.
Yeah.
So to me, that's for me to have the privilege to do all those things, that is abundance
Yeah.
for me.
Agreed. Beautifully
Mm-hmm.
said. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so
Yes,
much
no,
for being
I love this.
here.
I
I
love these conversations. We could
know
probably go on all day
we
and night
could
about this.
we
I love
could go on all day and
it.
night.
Yeah.
Like that's the beauty of like these conversations
Yes.
is that they can go on forever. But this has been
Absolutely.
such a treat for me to do this in person with you and also to hear your insight on things. Especially being a woman of color, like I very much respect and honor that because that experience is so similar to mine as well. Even though we have different backgrounds, like I relate so heavily to the things that you were sharing. So I really appreciate all of
Yes.
that.
No, thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. And we will see you next time. And as always, keep being the amazing you that you are. Take care. Bye. Hey, love. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you adored what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you took a moment to leave a review on the platform you are listening to this episode on. By doing this, you are helping my mission to impact other women with their healing journeys. If you aren't already following me on social media, make sure to connect with me at Sarita Wellness to get your weekly dose of inspiration. I can't wait to be with you in the next episode, but in the meantime, keep being the amazing you that you are.